are here with very special guests, and we are talking about Malaysia future forward. At Bernama, we have our own approximation of what that would be. Of course, at the current desk, we have narrowed it down to the creation of an infrastructure that is easily adaptable to whatever change that the future requires. So joining me today, I am like a amazing panel that we have. Of course, we've got Tan Sri Ramon Navaratnam, we've got Prof. Rozita Amin, and the lovely Adiba Radzi joining us this afternoon as we discuss Malaysia future forward. Thank you everyone for being here today. And thank you for spending time with us.
Oh, thank you for inviting us.
Okay, straight off the bat, Tan Sri Ramon. I wanted to ask you, Tan Sri, you've witnessed the journey of the country, and I remember you giving an interview saying that you were a young boy watching Tunku Abdul Rahman during the proclamation of Merdeka. And then you've not only done that, but you've also gone through the process of assisting the country in so many different capacities, from the ministry to corporate, and of course a policy commentator. What are some of the pivotal moments that you've seen in your journey in Malaysia? How have we come this far? And what are some of your thoughts on how we can do better moving ahead?
Well, thank you very much, Masih. First of all, selamat Hari Kebangsaan Malaysia, Hari Malaysia. As you described milestones, it flashes back in my memory. I was there right on August 31st, 57. As a university student, we had only one university for both territories in Singapore. It was vacation time. Musa and all that. I'm trying to just show the batch we were in.
Yes.
Tan Sri Salahuddin. So I came on holidays. My house, the government quarters, just walked across to the VI. You couldn't get to the stadium, so cari lubang lah in the pagar sana. Where we used to run away for things sekolah sometimes. And it was marvelous. But then you had Malaysia Day, you had confrontation. I remember the time traveling from Ipoh to KL, and you have armored cars. The time, Gurney was killed by communist terrorists. It was a very trying period. But I also learnt one lesson. And I think today we seem to be unnecessarily pessimistic or too pessimistic.
Thank you for pointing that out. I love that. Could you share with us why you think that is so?
Because what you read in the press, what you hear, or what the speeches you hear are not necessarily balanced. People are very critical, very negative, and feel a sense of hopelessness to some extent. I think we should counter that. Because when you think of it, of all these years now, 62 years, and Malaysia's a few years, we've had peace, which you can't take for granted. In many parts of the world, there's strife all the time, there's insecurity. We have our quarrels, but I like to look at it as a Malaysian family. I quarrel with my wife sometimes, or my son.
Fight fair.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
So I hear you, Tan Sri. You said the energy was something that was really telling when we first gained not only independence, but more importantly, when we came together as a nation, as one big family. That's what you said. And then moving forward, there were ups and there were downs like any other family, and there is really no need to be unnecessarily pessimistic about things, because what we should be looking at is a balance. So from there, I want to ask the lovely Adiba. Now, you've been in the media, you know how things work. Of course, in recent times, there's always been, I suppose, a proliferation of bad news. Everybody's more inclined to believe fake news than things that, of course, would require more check and balance. How do we address this? I mean, you've seen the rise of media in Malaysia, and you too are a powerful advocate on social media as well as on the media platforms on not only disability rights and advocacy, but also as championing what a real balanced Malaysia should be. So what are your thoughts?
Well, first and foremost, I want to remind everyone that what you read and is not necessarily true. Sometimes it gets lost in translation.
Yes.
So you really need to find out before posting things. Everybody it's really fast. Oh, I get this news and I want to share it. But you really need to understand, where this story is coming from. You need to do some research. And before, during our time, the only place that we can find out about information is, apart from people like interviewing Tan Sri, we have to go to the libraries.
And you don't have Tan Sri Ramon on hand all the time, right?
Yes, we don't have him all the time, But now everything is on the phone. You just click Wikipedia, Google, they have everything. Yeah. But I always tell people, then is different. Now is different. Everything, technology is very quick. And media as per se, we have to keep up with the development. Every other week there's new technologies and stuff like that. But for us, human being, we in general, not just as Malaysians, we really need to, before we post anything, before we say, before we share, as media people, or even as orang kebanyakan, the normal people at large, you have to sit back and say, is this what it is?
Yeah.
You can't just hear and immediately rush into it.
That's why they say think 10 times before you click send,
yes,
right?
You got to calm down. Just like Tan Sri was saying, before, it's like, you just fight, but, you quarrel, but, you get over it. But it is dangerous now if we are not careful. The technology can influence our minds. And the scary part is our younger generation, they're getting all this information so fast. So if we do not draw a line, and like people like MCMC don't curb and don't make rulings, we cannot control it.
I think we were also talking about this earlier when the Ministry of Youth as well as the Prime Minister's office was talking about maturity in politics as well as maturity in sharing, right? So before I get to you on the next question, I want to update again on the prize that we have. There is a question, of course, the earlier quiz, and what act was the Bernama news channel set up. So please share with us that. Now 5 lucky winners will win a prize, not only a ticket entry but also to dine at the Top Penang. So there you see, the Top Penang. You want to call in and they will be giving you the number. The studio will be talking to you, because this is definitely not something that you want to miss. So you did talk about the fact that not only are we looking at information now constantly bombarding the youth, but also that ability to sift through what is real and what is not. So now I want to ask Prof Rozita, in the work that you do, you have been pushing and struggling and advocating towards a Malaysia that is not only inclusive but integrated. You've not only worked with the youth but also in the government as well as academia in what a truly inclusive Malaysia would look like. So in your view, what needs to be done, especially to ensure that the rights of people with disabilities are not missed out?
Thank you very much, Nadia, and for inviting me today. There is actually a lot for us to do, all right? Because Malaysia is approaching towards a developed country, right? So in order to become a developed country, we also must have, the developed level best practices, okay? So with regard to the persons with disabilities, it's a chicken and egg thing. Sometimes, if the facilities and the support structure is not there, the person with disabilities remain at home. They don't go out. So when that happens, the society is not exposed to them, all right? And if they want to go out, there are no facilities and support structure. It's not there, all right? I mean, it's there, but it is not sufficient. Yeah. So I think there is a lot to be done. For instance, in education, right? So I think the current administration is trying their best to implement inclusive policies such as the zero reject policy. Yeah. And lately, recently we just launched the guidelines for the implementation of disability inclusion policy in institutions of higher learning, right? Yeah. So I think that is a big milestone that we have achieved in terms of trying to get accessibility or inclusiveness in higher learning institutions, right? Because I think, as you're aware, in the Malaysian education blueprint, right, for the lower education, it is stated, what are the things that needs to be done in order to improve the special education for students with special needs. But in higher education, that component is lacking, right? So this is where the guidelines come in to assist universities and institutions of higher learning to implement this disability inclusion policy, so that the students can enjoy university life to the fullest. The teaching and learning support, they can go to class, they can follow the studies easily, right? They have the support from the lecturers, right? They have the support from the administrators, from the top management, and so on, and they can get involved in activities, right? And they can develop themselves as later as graduates who can actually really contribute to the nation. And this is what we want, right? The inclusion in higher education, so that we produce the right manpower, whether they are disabled, have disabilities or without disabilities. They have equal responsibility to contribute to the nation, and it's also our responsibility to make sure that they get the right kind of support, right? And they get the right kind of facilities during their student days.
So I hear you. You've talked about pessimism and keeping positive and optimistic. You talked about the importance of being mature and a little bit more understanding about the digestion of information that you're getting. You're talking about the importance of having systems, making sure that things integrate. Yes. What exactly now, before I move further, is, of course, Big Chief Tun M has talked about a nation where we've got this concept of shared prosperity, and of course those who are familiar with sustainability talks about the fact that it should then be a state where no one is left behind. But what does that actually mean, a state where no one is left behind? You were talking about how people are still falling through the cracks. You were talking about the fact that people are still stuck in their mindsets, and you were sharing with us about the fact that people are still consuming news that might not necessarily be the case. So how do we galvanize the country into really a state of shared prosperity? Anyone, any thoughts?
Okay, well, you go ahead first.
Rapid fire.
That's a very interesting question,
Yes.
and it's very current, very topical
True.
with Tun and the government's view on shared prosperity. But it begs a lot of questions, and this is why we got to be very alert, as you say, Adiba, and analyze and question it, so that we don't misinterpret or misunderstand, and then pessimism increases.
Yes.
So the issue is, what is shared prosperity?
What do you think? Because it's meant to be a discussion,
Yeah,
so everyone's got to.
Let me just say a little bit more on it. I think we have been practicing that all along, but not done well enough. You tax the rich, you don't tax the poor, you provide more facilities for the poor, the bottom 40%. That is shared prosperity.
So we need...
But the disparities are wide and widening. The latest report from the UN show that our poverty rates are still quite high.
We have a
maybe
way to go.
15-20%, and not 0.4% as we were claiming. And that's because, again, the mindset. We had a pretty good system. We have a good system, but we don't adjust it for inflation. So over the years, you're stuck, and you think, well, it's fine. Also, the standard of living, the basket of goods, the quality of life, expectations are higher today than just subsisting, from a starvation diet in the old days. Nobody, thank God, dies, and this is a blessing in our country. Nobody, I think, dies of starvation
and hunger.
And that's not true in many parts of the world. So shared prosperity is a good thing. We must discuss it more and be able to define it in clearer terms, so that you get support from all the people and nobody feels left out. Now, there are a lot of people who feel that they're left out.
Oh, I can.
Sabah, Sarawak,
Please, proceed.
Malaysia.
This is meant to be... Take it away. What do you think?
But
What are your thoughts?
Sabah, Sarawak, you make them feel more inclusive.
Yes.
As you say, Prof.
It's true.
They feel left out.
It's
and a
true.
lot of communities here also feel left out. So it's not, we are a blessed country, we got all the resources, we just lack the political will, because too many politicians, I think, are playing politics.
That's why today it's all about how the rakyat can rise and how we can, take more initiatives, stand out there and talk about the issues that we are passionate about. And you were about to share with us something.
Well, okay.
The big sign.
We've been independent for the last 62 years, with all due respect to all our forefathers and all the politicians and everyone who's worked hard. I have to say this is based and related to what Professor Rozita was talking about. No one gets left behind, like what Tan Sri was saying. But I have to say that my community, our community, do not feel that independence. We feel like third-class citizens. Again, based on what you mentioned, the accessibility is not in the rural areas. All my friends are out there, they cannot come out.
Yes.
They cannot go to school, they cannot go to work. People discriminate, they don't give us job. If they give us job, they expect us to do something that we are, that
you can do more.
Yes, we can do more. So the thing is, for me, shared prosperity is really, it boils down to education. Education, no one gets left behind. We should and must be able to go to school. We want to go to school. Professor Rozita, her mom had to help her, bring her up to the classes.
Yeah.
I was teaching before, and my students carried me up. And all these things. This is
Shouldn't be the case.
Yes, we're going into
where
2020.
we're at right now, we shouldn't be having to carry people on wheelchairs up 3 stories.
That's right.
Okay.
So for me, hold on. For me, we should concentrate on TVET. We should up on the JPP, Jabatan Pengajian Polytechnic and College Community. Get more people to come out, and people who are aged. Get them to also study so that, shared prosperity.
And lifelong learning.
Yes,
as you
lifelong learning.
When, Prof, you had mentioned earlier when we were talking about not only being part of society, you did say that it's a whole process. It's not just looking at things in bits and bobs, right? So I think that's where, when we're talking about shared prosperity and we want to move to a place where no one is left behind, what I'm hearing here is everybody needs to play their role. True. And you did say that there's this assumption of the PWDs don't go out, the persons with disabilities are not out there. Sometimes we have to show that we're out for supply of whatever assistance that we need to come in. There's a demand and supply issue that's happening here. I wanted to ask very quickly about this concept of Malaysia being a melting pot. A lot of people say, oh, Malaysia is a lovely country, it's a melting pot. Is it, in your view, is it really a melting pot, or is it more of a cultural mosaic? Because at the moment right now, we hear a lot of people wanting to be same but different. We're sitting together, we are all individuals with different cultural backgrounds, with different race, religion issues, but we agree to disagree on a lot of the big facts, and we're coming together. So what are your thoughts?
I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah?
It's a bit of both, right? To a certain extent,
it's a weave, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. To a certain extent, we do agree on many things, right? We do come to terms on many things. But on certain aspects, we still retain our cultural identity, in our languages, I think, there are pros and cons to it, of course, right? So, of course, if we focus on our differences, then we will be different all the time. Yeah. But I think we also need to focus on our, common grounds, yeah, and what do we agree on. And in fact, the differences can actually not be something negative. It can actually be positive, whereby we complement each other. Right, so there are actually many studies that shows that for companies, for instance, right, if they have diverse culture, in the companies, they actually perform better. Right, so I think
that unity in diversity.
Exactly,
concept.
Right, because you complement each other. You have certain cultures have got different strengths in, and others have got different strengths in other areas. So you complement each other. A simple situation: Hari Raya or Chinese New Year, we can take our leave because we have other counterparts. We can cover our work, isn't it? So it's things like that. So I think we should focus on trying to capitalize on our differences rather than using it to divide the country.
To wedge a divide between us.
Exactly.
I love the fact that all this is coming out right now. So I wanted to ask all of us together in this discussion, what would it take to bring Malaysia to 2030? Of course, Tun M was talking about shared prosperity, and we've passed 2020 now. We can't be planning for that anymore. And we're now moving to Malaysia 2030. What are some of the things you feel we can be doing together as a nation, as a rakyat, to achieve that aspiration?
Okay, I would like to relate again back to the persons with disabilities, right? I think as what Tan Sri has mentioned, we have done, things over the years, but we have not done enough, right?
Yes.
So with regard to the person with disabilities, we have the Person with Disabilities Act, all right? We have signed the United Nations Convention on the Rights for Persons with Disabilities, right? And then we also have laws and rules and regulations whereby it is a requirement for buildings to be accessible, for instance, right? And we need to have, the infrastructure there in order for us to get education. Education is a crucial thing, right? In order for us to get employment, right? So education is the most crucial thing. But how can a person with disability get the education if the environment is disabling? Okay? We need to enable the environment, right? So, for instance, we have the Uniform Building by Law, right? Which is with Section 34B, whereby it actually requires all your buildings to be compliant to the Malaysian standards for accessibility. But unfortunately, it is not being enforced, right? So I think this is where, what Tan Sri is saying, we are doing it, but we're not doing enough, right?
Tan Sri, what
And
about
we
you?
can do a lot more.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a lot of wastage
Yes,
in government
yes,
expenditure,
yes.
a lot of corruption. I mean, this we all know, but we cannot forget it.
Yeah,
We must focus on it.
it's true.
A lot of inefficiencies. And the saving from all this could really help those who are disadvantaged.
Yes.
A great deal
Efficiency
more.
and re-education, right? That's what I'm hearing you.
Corruption. Now, you talked about the melting pot. I think I like to see that in the long term, we're all sort of going to fuse, but it'll take time.
Yes.
In the meantime, you're a mosaic. And there's nothing wrong with it, as Professor said. We look at the assets of each race and enjoy it. Look at Mooncake Festival. You got vegetarian mooncake nowadays. You got halal kind of mooncake.
Yeah.
You got and our food. So we are actually more like a rojak.
Rojak Pasembur. That I
Oh,
like
because you're
that.
Penang.
What about you, Karen?
Well, I think we have to remember where we started. History is very important. Teaching our young what it was like before, how everyone had to work very hard to gain our independence. We need to remind our youngsters and also ourselves that it wasn't easy before. So what mosaic is wonderful. I mean, I get really upset when people say, this race is like this, that race is like that. I am mixed Indian, I am mixed Malay, I am mixed Chinese. I'm like, what?
Maybe one
A real
way.
Malaysian.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on maybe someday just doing away with those check boxes of which race you belong to? Because you've rightly pointed out, you're probably going to end up in lain lagi, right? You don't quite fit because it's a mash of everyone together.
Yes, I mean, I find it beautiful that our country is so colorful. Race, religion, it's beautiful. During that time, these guys were having fun. They don't bicker with each other.
Yes.
They're like they go out. They have parties. They have gatherings, and they love each other.
Yes.
What has happened to all of us? We've stopped loving each other.
Even Joget,
That's exactly what Zuna
Yes.
said this morning, love each other.
Yeah, there is
Right.
nothing wrong with Joget. That's how we are like. We
But
come
you see, the
together like
problem
this.
is how to get to where we want to go. We must, all of us, who are regardless of race or religion, really discourage, condemn, criticize, isolate bigots and
Yes.
racists.
Yes.
No room for
Anybody who
racism,
talks about along racial lines or religious bigotry,
Just
whatever
stop it.
religion,
Yeah.
it's not only one religion, every religion
It's true.
has
Yeah.
got bigots.
It's true.
Yeah.
We must isolate them
Yeah,
because
that's very
they are
important.
poison.
Yeah.
You've got a beautiful society, as Adiba is saying, but if you don't cultivate it and you will allow poison to disrupt the society, and then we can be lost. Then from a melting pot we become a boiling point,
Oh, true.
Yes.
a boiling pot,
I would have to
and
agree.
it will overflow with anger,
Yeah.
hate, and venom, and this.
And we're not
instability.
like that.
Yeah.
Far from it.
That's not what we Malaysians are.
Exactly.
We're not. That's why sometimes I think we should just. I know I might be a bit realistic, but sometimes I think we should just stop and breathe and go like, like, wow, Malaysia, we're so peaceful. other parts of the world, they're having all sorts of problems, but we're not.
That's true.
You know?
On that, I want to ask, what would be that one message you want every Malaysian to know? If there was one message that you need to give out, what would it be?
For me,
Yes.
I think respect.
Respect.
I think everybody would have to respect each other, right? Respect regardless of race, regardless of religion. Whenever the differences, you just have to respect and acceptance, right? Similarly, with for persons with disabilities, respect and acceptance. That's what we want.
Yes, I agree with Prof. Actually, what we should do is consciously, day and night, with all our friends in our work, in our interactions, promote national unity.
Yes.
Love, as Adiba says, for each other, you know, and respect and be compassionate.
Yes.
We can be an example to the whole world because our multiculturalism, multiracialism, multi-religious society is quite unique.
True.
Yeah.
And if we can succeed, the whole world can succeed in one small country, you know. Geographically also there must be more integration. I hope this Malaysia 63, the agreement, there shouldn't be quarrels about that.
Yes.
It's all there in black and white. The implementation went wrong. People are unhappy. And there's even talk that, you know, of strong dissension between Sabah, Sarawak and Peninsular Malaysia. That should not happen.
Yeah.
And we should all, whether Sabah and Sarawak and Muruts, Kadazans or whatever, aim towards building national unity.
Let
like
not the mishap of the
Raz
past
says in the
repeat.
past, you know.
Yes. For
We
me,
would sit down and eat. Some chap, he wants to eat pork, let him eat pork.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not eating it.
It's true.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, there needs to be respect and, of course, acceptance. That we, yes, are different, but in many ways we are the same. And let our differences be what binds us together, because Prof and Raz and Tan Sri Ramon also said that university in diversity. So respect and acceptance, focus on national unity, create a society that is filled with compassion, create a Malaysia that we want, not filled with hate or bigotry, but one that is future forward and is always looking at bettering itself. I think we've had all that time that we can spend today, but
Another thing.
Yes.
We gotta be grateful and kind
Yes,
to each other.
betul.
Grateful
Be
and
grateful.
kind.
Agree.
And remember our Rukun Negara.
Rukun Negara and be grateful. And with that, we're now going to go to pass the baton over to Mirza Hassan at Studio 3.